The House on Willow Lane. The old Victorian house on Willow Lane had stood empty for decades, a decaying relic of a bygone era. Local legend held that it was haunted, but most people in the small town of Black Hollow dismissed the stories as mere superstition. That is, until the day a young couple, Sarah and Mark, decided to buy the house and renovate it into their dream home. Sarah and Mark had always dreamed of restoring an old house, and the price of the Victorian on Willow Lane was too good to pass up. They were aware of the rumors, but were not the type to believe in ghosts. With a sense of excitement and determination, they moved in and began their work. From the very first day, strange things began to happen. Tools went missing, only to reappear in odd places. Unexplained cold spots moved through the house, and at night, the couple heard faint whispers and creaking footsteps in the hallways. They chalked it up to the old house settling and their imaginations running wild due to the eerie atmosphere. As they tore down walls and stripped away decades of neglect, they discovered hidden rooms and strange, archaic symbols etched into the wooden beams. In the attic, they found an old, dust-covered diary belonging to a woman named Eliza Thorncroft, who had lived in the house over a century ago. The diary detailed Eliza's descent into madness and her obsession with dark rituals in an attempt to communicate with her deceased husband. Intrigued but unnerved, Sarah read through the diary, finding increasingly disturbing entries. Eliza wrote about hearing her husband's voice, seeing his shadow, and feeling his cold touch. The final entry was a frantic scrawl, pleading for forgiveness and describing a ritual she believed had gone horribly wrong. That night, Sarah had a vivid nightmare. She saw Eliza performing a ritual in the basement, surrounded by flickering candles and chanting in an unknown language. The air grew thick with an oppressive presence, and a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. Sarah awoke drenched in sweat, the memory of the figure's eyes haunting her. The next day, Mark decided to investigate the basement, curious about Sarah's dream and the diary's final entry. As he descended the creaky wooden stairs, the temperature dropped sharply, and a sense of dread washed over him. The basement was dark and cluttered, filled with old, rotting furniture and forgotten relics. In a far corner, hidden behind a stack of decaying boxes, Mark found a door that had been sealed shut. With considerable effort, he pried it open and discovered a small, dimly lit room. The walls were covered in more of the strange symbols, and in the center of the room was an old, tarnished altar with remnants of melted candles and dusty, ancient tomes. As Mark inspected the room, he heard a faint whispering, growing louder and more insistent. The air grew heavy, and he felt an unseen presence watching him. Panicking, he rushed out of the room and back upstairs, slamming the door behind him. He tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but couldn't escape the sense that something sinister had awakened. That night, the house seemed to come alive. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the halls. Shadows danced on the walls, and the temperature plummeted. Sarah and Mark huddled together, terrified and unsure of what to do. They decided to leave the house the next day, but as the clock struck midnight, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. Sarah felt a cold hand grasp her wrist, and she was pulled towards the basement. Mark tried to hold on to her, but an unseen force threw him back. Helpless, he He watched as Sarah was dragged down the stairs. Summoning his courage, he followed, determined to save her. In the basement, the sealed room was now open, and Sarah stood in the center, her eyes glazed over as if in a trance. The shadowy figure from her nightmare loomed behind her, its eyes burning with an otherworldly light. Mark rushed to her side, breaking her free from the entity's grip. In a desperate attempt to end the nightmare, Mark grabbed one of the ancient tomes from the altar and began reading aloud the incantations within. The shadowy figure writhed and shrieked, the oppressive presence intensifying. As Mark continued to read, the room shook, and the symbols on the walls glowed with an eerie light. With a final, thunderous roar, the shadowy figure disintegrated, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The house fell silent, and the temperature returned to normal. Sarah, now free from the trance, collapsed into Mark's arms, trembling. The couple left the house on Willow Lane that night, never to return. The experience left them shaken, but they were grateful to have survived. The Victorian house remained abandoned, a silent sentinel of the dark history that lay within its walls. The legend of the haunted house on Willow Lane grew, and the townsfolk of Black Hollow continued to whisper about the horrors that once resided there. Years later, the house still stood, its windows dark and empty, a chilling reminder of the past. Occasionally, passers-by would claim to hear faint whispers and see shadows moving within, but no one dared to enter. The house on Willow Lane remained a place of fear and mystery, its dark secrets forever hidden within its decaying walls.